every country. And so to better use its resources is important for every country. And they're the three fundamental questions that every country needs to answer. Now, we'll not do a recap, in fact, because today we have to talk about something much more important and much more interesting. But I'm just giving you a quick recap of what we did, right? Then we said that the three types of economic systems: free market, market economy, mixed economy, and command economy and planned economy. In mixed economy, you have both public and private sectors. Public goods are produced by public sector, private goods are produced by private sector, right? Simple. What is public sector, private sector? We already know. What is public good, private good? We already know, right? Then classification, another classification that we discussed is merit and demerit good, right? So yeah, now when we discussed how mixed economy operates, we said that since both sectors are there, so private sector will think for its own benefit, which is profit maximization, and public sector will think from its own lens, which is social welfare, right? And private sector answers to the three questions of what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce are different from the answers that we see for the public sector, obviously, because the objective is different. Are you getting me? So when the mindset is different, one is private business aiming for profit maximization, one is public business, which is providing social welfare. So the answers to the three questions are different: what to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce. Okay. And then I also added that most countries in the world that we see are mixed economies. There is presence of both public and private sector. Then another thing that we said, that the role of government in mixed economy is also to regulate the private sector, right? So whenever government sees that private sector is doing something that is harmful, right, or that is socially harmful, right, the government will step in to stop that behavior. How so? So if there is a private business that is causing pollution, the government will make rules around that, right? So perhaps there will be penalties or there will be regulations that stop businesses from polluting, right? Similarly, child labor is prohibited in all countries. You can't exploit labor. There's legal minimum wage, right? Are you getting me? By the way, do you guys know that if you employ someone less than the minimum wage, right, then you are technically punishable by law, right? So the minimum wage, I don't know exactly, that's 15 or 16,000 rupees per month in Pakistan. So if it's a full-time employee who is earning less than this amount with you, then that would be punishable by law, right? So, right, 21. I don't think so. Minimum wage in Pakistan. Right, so let's do a quick Google search, because 20,000, oh my God. But yeah, that's needed, right? I mean, because given the inflation rate that we have in Pakistan, like how much higher are the prices? Yes, yeah, you were correct. Very good, Johan. Thank you. Okay, are you getting me? So in mixed economy, the government role is also to regulate the private sector. Do you understand the language? Regulate means that when the government sees that private sector is doing something that is harmful, right, or an individual is doing something that is harmful, right, then they will make rules around it. Like smoking is not allowed below the age of 18 in Pakistan. Similarly, alcohol is not allowed below the age of 21 in other countries, and so on and so forth. There's so many different rules. Then we talked about the free market. Then we talked about the market economy or the free market. Now, what is market economy? The market economy is what I was telling you is the capitalism, right? So you must have come across this word here and there and so on. Capitalism, right? Capitalism believes in the market forces. What are market forces? In fact, this is a very interesting discussion, and we'll come to it in a bit when we talk about the pros and cons that capitalism is believer of market forces. If there is demand for something, you should provide it. By the way, do you guys know that in USA, in a lot of states of USA, not in every state of USA, but in most states of USA, weed, do you know what weed is? It's a type of drug, right? Even if you don't know, not a problem, right? That has been legalized. Marijuana, as we say, right? Marijuana is often legal in a lot of European countries, right? Now, what is the basis? How this legislation came into play, right? So, right, yes, it is, right? California, it's legal, and there are some other states in USA and in some countries, not every country, but in some countries in Europe. Now, that is interesting discussion. That's why I said they make this argument that since people want to consume it, obviously not only this, but there were also some, researches showing that, medical, there can be some medical use of it, right? So that's how they presented the case to their legislation body, which is their national government, whatever that National Assembly or whatever it is, right? And that is how they approved it. So coming back to the point, At the end of the day, the basis in capitalism is that capitalism believes in market forces. Okay. One quick thing that I want to add over here, right? And we move forward, and then we move forward. So all the notes that I'm making, these are absolutely free, and that these will be available to all of you, right? So what I will do is that I will share the notes from my Google Drive. So all I need is your email address. Whenever you can send me your email address, even after today's class, I'll just input your names and that file will be available for you to access whatever time you want to, right? Easy, right? So if during my classes you don't want to write anything down, that's perfectly fine. But in future, I would want to, when we come to some calculation parts, because there is some graphs and calculations in economics, then I would ideally want to sit along with, I would want you to sit with a calculator and a copy and a pencil just to see how things work. But otherwise, for the theoretical stuff, you can just listen, absorb, and then the notes will be available for you to use later. Okay, thank you. I will still need it in the form of a message later on, right? Because I'm not sending right now. Okay, so capitalism believes in market forces, and they say if a consumer needs / wants something, then it should be produced, right? It should be provided or produced. Right?
So technically, तो different people that are addicted to, मतलब हर ड्रग पे होते हैं, तो like वो हर चीज को illegal कर देंगे, then
नहीं,
वीड नहीं
लीगल
तो कोई और भी हो सकता है.
लीगल हाँ, मैं समझ गया आपकी बात बिल्कुल. तो उसमें जोहान देखिए, आर्गुमेंट ये है कि इसके अंदर सिर्फ ये वाला आर्गुमेंट नहीं था कि इट्स नॉट ओनली बिकॉज पीपल वांट टू कंज्यूम इट. देयर वाज आल्सो सम पार्ट ऑफ इट was about the fact that researchers found that it has some medical benefits. But then states, those that approved, now think about this. Now this is where it becomes very interesting, because this is the domain of public policy. Now if you are letting people use for the base of medical reasons, then obviously you need a medical prescription for that. Are you getting me? If I'm a doctor, if I'm a medical practitioner, then if I write someone that for XYZ reasons this person wants to consume, if he wants to, then let him do that. That's a different story altogether. But are you getting me? But the states that have legalized it, this means that anyone above a certain age can go and consume it. No check and balance for that. Right? So I mean, yeah, you're very right. So this is what the other side of the argue. This is what the other group argues. What you have said, right? That's a very good argument. That there's so many other much harmful drugs, and if you go on doing like this, then what will you do? Will you legalize all of that? It doesn't make sense, right? Right. In some cases, but in some cases it's also, like in Amsterdam, it's completely legalized, right? So no medical, no recreation is also fine. No medical, right? If it is for medical, that's good. But even if you want to consume it, otherwise you're fine, right? So both things exist at the moment. Okay. So capitalism believes in market forces. If a consumer needs something, then it should be provided. That is what the fundamental is. Now, what happens in free markets, that most resources, as we discussed, is owned by the private sector, and private sector decides what to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce. We did talk about it in detail yesterday, right? Then I also asked you this question, that why private sector never produces public goods. So why private sector never produces public good? And the simple explanation to that is that you cannot charge people. If you remember the discussion we had yesterday, you cannot charge people on the basis of the usage, on the basis of how much they're using. You can't charge people for public goods. That's why it's not profitable for the private sector to produce public goods. Like think of a road, think of a street light, right? Think of a lighthouse at the shore, right? So you can't determine how much each person is using, and therefore you can't charge them accordingly, right? So private sector, not profitable to produce public goods, therefore they will never produce it. Okay. Now, then towards the end of our yesterday's class, we talked about command economy or planned economy, right? So this is also known as, by the way, there's another word for it. Just like there's a word for free market, the word for this system is known as communism, right? So communism existed in China some time back, but now they are switching towards mixed economy. They are moving more towards mixed economy, because some resources are privately owned. People can own resources. Now think about this, students. This is a very important point that I want to bring your attention to. So in command economy or in planned economy, all resources are owned by the government. There's no private ownership of resources, right? There is no private ownership of resources in, you guys get me? Right? So who owns all resources? It is the government, and therefore it's the government that decide what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce, right? Okay, perfect. Now we do know that government is thinking for social welfare, and they will try to prioritize, they will always in fact prioritize basic things like the public goods and the merit goods. What are the merit goods that are beneficial for consumers, like education, like healthcare, right? How do they produce? A government is not, again, not a profit making entity, so the government will want to hire as many people as much they can, right? And for whom to produce is that the distribution of the goods in command economy is on the basis of need, not on the basis of affordability. Easy, we good? Can we move on, students? Okay. Now, this being said, today we'll talk about the pros and cons of these different economic systems, right? Okay. Now let's get started. We can start off with any system that you want to. So how about we start off with free market first? Government don't need profits because it have a proper income in the form of taxes. Right. Yeah. 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 And obviously that's the distinction. That's the distinction. I mean, it's not that the tax that they earn is for their own income. They're just managing their expenses. One, are you getting me? So government by its very nature, the government by its very nature is not a profit-making entity. Are you getting me? Government has more of a maternal, paternal role where they are caring about the citizens. They want their citizens to be happy, right? And things like that. Social welfare, like equality, equity, things like that. Whereas private sector is all about, if something is profitable, let's do it, and things like that. Got it? But the income, obviously, they do generate income in the form of taxes, but that is only to provide the goods that the other sector, which is private sector, will not provide. So they know private sector will not provide defense. It is not interested. It will not provide roads, defense, and all that stuff. So that is why the government takes taxes, but they never take so much taxes that they, put it in their own pockets or use for their own, kind of thing. Got it? That is just according to the need of the country. Okay. Now, pros and cons of different economic systems. So let's get started. Perfect. Let's get started with free market, right? So for free market, you can just start throwing me the pros and cons, and I would ideally want everyone to contribute, right? So if we are thinking about the free market, what are the pros and cons? So what we can do instead over here is that we can insert a table, because that helps, right? So how about we insert a table over here, right? So we have pros on the right, left column, and cons on the right column. Okay. So let's get started. So yeah, what do you think are the pros and cons of free market, where it's only private ownership of resources, and therefore the private sector decide what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce, right? Okay, we'll take it one by one. Price wars. Okay, quality of goods are more. Okay, now students, think about this. The way private sector operates, is that right? They are right. They are there to maximize profit, but they face a lot of competition. So Mega Lecture is not the only firm that is providing online teaching. There are so many other platforms in Pakistan, in India, in other countries where you belong. So Mega Lecture really needs to stand out in terms of different things, perhaps quality of teaching, perhaps customer service, perhaps in terms of the grades that their students get, right? So, and this is not only true for this industry, this is true for every industry. If you go out with your parents for shopping or for dinner or anything, right, you have multiple options to choose from. You can go to McDonald's, KFC, Hardee's. You can buy your clothes from XYZ brands. You can buy your phone from XYZ brands. So there's always this competition that keeps firms competitive, right? And in the process, the first thing is when there are a couple of firms, multiple firms producing same product, which provides variety of goods for customers. Students, are you getting me? So if at any point you feel that there is any point that's not self-explanatory or not good enough explanation is given by me, please let me know there and then, so that I can answer that. Wow, that's very expensive. And we already have a lot of saturation of KFC in Pakistan. Yeah, so I don't think so we need more of it. But I mean, this is an interesting dynamic. We'll talk about it, right? Yeah. Okay. What else, students? So there's variety of goods, right? There are variety of goods. Now, linked to this point is, since there are multiple firms, now you have to pay attention to the wording that's being used. Since there are multiple firms producing a product like restaurants, then consumers will choose brands that are relatively quality and more affordable. Now, what do we understand out of this? So it's not just about having more variety. It's also about that this competition brings you lower prices, brings you, meaning who is you? Consumer. So this competition between firms brings consumer lower prices and better quality, right? Again, so if mega lecture teachers are not that good compared to other online teaching platforms, students will switch, right? At the end of the day, right? Yes or no? And this happens for pretty much every product that we know of. Quality has to be good, very good, excellent. Okay, what else? Right, so we have talked about the variety of goods. So if I have to just highlight, the main things, right? Relatively better quality and more affordable, right? So this is one unique thing that you have to provide. Okay, what else? Right? Free market we're talking about. What else? Right? Another very important thing, demand for a product, or let's put it another way. Uh, Private sector businesses, and I'll give you an example, are more responsive changes in customers' demand. Do you agree with me? Right? What do I mean by that? So they're more responsive. Exactly. The business has to be dynamic. What do I mean by that is that, think about this. COVID happened, right? Mega Lecture was operating even before it, right? But there's so many other businesses that established themselves online teaching platforms soon after COVID. And the answer was very simple and obvious, right? It's an opportunity. Students are not going out and their parents are looking for some online solutions. So why not start a business around that? Similarly, think about food delivery apps, right? So people, over time, cities have started becoming more congested in every country of the world, right? So going out and just for having dinner or buying food is time consuming. People don't want to do that. So how about there's an app, we like the businesses thought of coming up with an app delivery, food delivery app, right? And similarly, there's so many other inventions that have taken place like Uber, Cream, blah, 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 so many other things, right? So private sector businesses are responsive to changes in customers' demand. And if there is demand for a product, then sooner or later, private sector will reduce that. Right? Are you getting me? So sooner or later, they do respond to it and they produce those products. Food Panda CEO said that they will be break even in 2020 and being running since 2012. Do you think they are lacking in management? Okay, so that's definitely, I also heard the same thing from someone else, right? Thank you for sharing this one. So the way startups work, a lot of these startups are not very profitable in the start. You would know about Airlift in Pakistan. Airlift, it's not operational in other countries. It's still a very national startup, but they are also not making profit, right? And you see their rider everywhere after every 2 minutes on the road and everything, right? So the thing is that, yeah, they are more of in the long-term strategy. Just like Noon app is not making profit at the moment, right? So now they have started charging, so perhaps they might earning profit, but the startups are on a different strategy. Management is not that much of a management, so it's more about creating a behavior that people then continue forever. Are you getting me? So let me put it in simple words and you will get a better idea what do I mean. So today I was posting a job on Facebook, right? You might know that if you have a company page or something, right, you can post a job through that, right? So Mega Lecture has a Facebook page, you would know, and we were posting a job. So in that, they asked me to pay for it. Now there can be free ads, there are still some free advertisements like free job posting, but then they also have the option of paid job posting, because with paid you can get a greater reach, more people see the job, they apply, blah blah blah, right? So the thing is, Facebook was absolutely free, so it's still free for the user, right? You want to go make an account. Why is that free? Because if you start charging the user some money, they will stop coming. They'll stop coming. Instagram is free. You can make your account. I have made my account, but every time a company advertise something, they have to pay for it. YouTube is free for us to use. Any video, any topic in the world, I can just go and YouTube it, right? Easy, right? But they're charging insane amounts of money. They even pay for people. They even pay people, YouTube specifically, YouTube only, right? They pay people who are creating content on that. But they're charging insane amounts of money to companies who come for advertisement then, right? Are you getting me? So on one end, they're getting the people used to it because that is what will get them the money from the companies. When every company knows, right? No companies do conventional nowadays, like the conventional marketing hardly exists. When was the last time you saw an ad on your television? I'm sure a lot of you do not put on televisions nowadays. Phone is more of a thing now. Laptop is more of a thing now, right? So all the ads that we see is either on the Facebook or on our Instagram or on our YouTube, right? We hardly watch outside the window when we are traveling somewhere, right? Unless we are driving, right? So the thing is, gone are the days when things used to happen, in traditional ways, right? Now billboards are an old thing. They still exist, right? I'm not saying that it's gone forever, but you're getting my point, right? So they create a habit. Initially, they keep it free so that food partner services are so cheap for the customers. And once they get used to it, then slowly and gradually, they'll try to pick up from there. Students, is this making sense? Are we good on this? Any confusion so far? Anything you want to add to? Anything you want to ask question about? Right? So we are quickly wrapping this up. No worries, no worries. Right? So we are quickly wrapping this up of the three benefits that we have discussed so far, right? So there are multiple firms, right? Whatever sector, whatever industry we talk about, there will be multiple firms producing that product. There will be more variety. You can find expensive clothes, very expensive clothes, very cheap clothes, right? It's variety. Similarly, as there is more competition, more firms, so firms are always competing for best prices and better quality, right? That's another thing. And then private sector is very responsive to change in customers' needs. As I was saying, online teaching, even online healthcare services are nowadays available through apps, right? So these are all the interesting things that are happening. Different price of similar products to choose. Exactly, absolutely, right? Different prices, different quality to choose between. Very nice. Okay. Now, we will continue with the pros. If any other pro you comes to your mind, we can totally write this down, but let's also discuss some cons, right? Now, the biggest challenge, biggest problem is that private businesses will produce any product that is profitable, even if it's a demerit good. If it is a demerit good, right? So, I mean, there have been a lot of researches about how a lot of things that we're doing nowadays in the modern lifestyle is quite harmful, right? Even excessive use of social media, there have been some researches showing that, it leads to depression, it leads to psychological problems and stuff like that, right? So, and then there's few goods that are unarguably harmful, right? Alcohol, cigarettes, and all that stuff, right? But I mean, all these things are being produced by the private sector. Will be produced, right? Exactly, right? So that's a big challenge over here, right? Right, making sense? Okay. Then another thing. So Zohan, let me just quickly say one thing. You said no public goods. So in free market, I did say that there will be some basic level of government. So there is always some basic level of government, because think about this. Even USA, any country, USA is the closest example of free market. That's why I'm quoting it over here. So even their government exists and they provide public goods like defense, roads, and parks, but they will not do anything more, as I was giving you the example. So the US government will not perhaps provide child support, to its citizens or things like that. But the basic level of government is still there to ensure the provision of public goods. Is it making sense? Yeah. It's always confusing. That's why I thought to clarify this. Is everyone clear on this? So in free market, basic level of government is still there, and it's only responsible for providing public goods. No extra regulation, right? And that is the reason why US is one of the first countries to legalize drugs like these, right? Because they believe in the idea. If people want to consume it, they are sensible, they know their own, they know their benefits and cost. So let them choose whatever they want to, right? That's the argument. And you will not even imagine, there's such a stupid law in US that if a biker wants to wear a helmet in every country of the world, including Pakistan, right? Every country, there's this law that you have to wear a helmet, which kind of makes sense. You have to wear a seatbelt. It kind of makes sense. But there was some discussion going on. I don't know exactly what the law around that is. But I mean, some people would argue over there that wearing a helmet is a personal choice. So if that person doesn't want to wear it, are you getting me? I mean, that's, for us, perhaps it's stupid, but when the argument goes into the idea of, like choice, then I mean, what can you do about it? In fact, there's a very, very interesting example, and I would really want to share it over here, even though it might take a little longer, but that's very relevant over here. So yesterday I was talking to a friend, a good colleague and a friend. She used to teach with me at Head Start. So now she has gone to USA to do her master's in education. So she was telling me the story that the other day, a student of 10th grade in Boston, which is a big city in USA, a very metropolitan city, that student brought lighter, and in the chemistry lab where you have all these dangerous chemicals, he lit up the lighter or something. He was trying to do something, with that. And it is, I mean, just imagine the intensity of the situation. And another day, another student brought a knife, a big knife, in his or her, I don't remember, in her bag. And I was like, just out of my mind. You must have always heard about the shooting that goes on in school. So what type of shooting happens? I've always wondered, how can they be shooting in school? Students bring guns which their parents have, because in USA by law, anyone who wants to have a gun can have it. Isn't that stupid? Right? So, I mean, gun violence is obviously only high, and that's very related to the discussion that we're having. And if you can give examples like these in your exam, I mean, that's totally acceptable and you'll get credit for it, right? Now, capitalism, that is how capitalism thinks, that it's your right, it's your choice. If you want to choose anything, you can do that, right? So that's how, school shooting happens, right? Right? So terrorism is a different story, right? That happens because there is some crazy people who want to just kill people, right? But that's not terrorism, right? So if your parents have guns and they don't have it in closed lockers or whatever, and the child brings it, and the child is a child, at the end of the day, he or she might have seen some thriller movie at night, and then, I mean, this is a very serious thing, right? So, and yeah, so coming back to the main part, and then I said, why don't schools in USA make a rule around that, right? That at least to check the bags, right? So perhaps they cannot make a rule on the national level that, you can't own guns, but at least they can have a rule and policy around checking the bags. And she said that they come up always with the argument that, it's, I mean, we don't have a warrant, we are not police, and we can't check and so on. I mean, that's very stupid, I think. Right. Wow. That's not interesting. Like, that is interesting, but that's not cool, Zwan. You should have been more careful. Okay. Glad that you're not taking chemistry anymore. Okay, let's keep moving, students. Let's keep moving. Okay, so private businesses will produce any product that is profitable, even if it's a demerit good, right? So that's explanatory. Then there is no government intervention. Now, this is another point. Think about this. Intervention that regulates behavior of private sector, right? So what do I mean by that? So think about this. If you remember, I gave you the example of monopoly, right? What is a monopoly? Monopoly is one big firm. If I did not mention, let me define it right now. So monopoly is also, that used to be, that still is, a board game that you might have seen. Um, right? And monopoly by definition in economics means one big business, right, that controls all of the market. Either it's the only business that is producing that product, or it's a very big, big player, big firm, right? So when they're monopolies, right, so one big business has all the control, it is selling all the product and so on, and can exploit the consumers and the customers by charging higher prices, because they know that they are the only one producing that, and customers have no option but to buy from them, right? So then there's no government. So what's the disadvantage of free market? There's no government intervention that regulates the behavior of private sector, like monopolies, right? Monopolies or pollution or other socially harmful activities. Are you getting? So that's another disadvantage of free market. Okay, what else? What are the disadvantages comes to your mind? So when there's only private sector, what would happen? Think about this. The private sector will provide education and healthcare only to those who can afford it. Am I right with this or not? Right now, government is not there. Government is not very much active in providing education, healthcare in free market, and therefore it's left on the mercy of private sector. And the private sector is obviously right who those who cannot pay for it. Right? Are you getting me? The private sector will not provide the sentence structure as the private sector will not provide education, right? Education and healthcare to those who cannot pay for it, right? Are you getting me? So that's another major disadvantage, right? Okay. What else? Any other disadvantage coming to your mind, right? Lots of competition, consumer exploitation. Yes, Zoya, that's correct. Very nice, right? Which can lead to consumer exploitation, consumer plus workers as well, right? Because when company is very huge and it has a lot of power, then they can even exploit their workers in terms of paying them less wages and salaries, right? Workers exploitation, right? Very good point. Okay. Okay, then there's another point that was coming to my mind. Not provide education and health only to those who can afford it. What else? Yeah, right. Is this making sense? Right. Okay. Now we might think of some other points. Let's see what I have written in the